There are a lot of weapons in Genshin Impact, and if you're new to the game or partway through, you may be struggling to deal solid damage or build a team that can really take you to the next level of gameplay. Team building is very important, but character builds are just as important too, and a lot of your character's value is going to come from their weapon. A good weapon makes a happy character, and a happy character makes a solid team. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over the top 5 free-to-play accessible weapons that you should be building, especially if you don't have access to a bunch of 5-star weapons. Now, just to make things clear, these weapons aren't going to be in any particular order because the value of each weapon depends on the account using it, and also by free-to-play accessible, I just mean that they're possible for free-to-play players to get with relatively high time investment. Now, with that out of the way, my name is Braxophone, and here are my top 5 free-to-play weapons that you should be building. In the number 5 slot, we have the Yamanome Kageuchi, which I probably just butchered the name of. It's the Inazuma Sword. This weapon is a completely free-to-play craftable 4-star one-handed sword that can be used on basically any one-handed sword unit in the entire game and still be very good. Now, one downside that it has is that its base attack is fairly low for a 4-star weapon. However, if you're using buffs in your team, you don't really have to worry about that as much. A lot of its value is actually coming from its attack percent main stat, which is going to be up to a maximum of 55% attack. And on top of that, its passive ability is what really makes this weapon stand out and shine. Because after casting an elemental skill, you're going to gain a succession seed, and what the succession seed is going to do is it's going to refund your energy after using an elemental burst. You can stack up 3 seeds at a time, and each one is going to regenerate 6 energy per seed at refinement 1, but at refinement 5 you're getting 12 energy per seed. That just means if you're using your elemental skill 3 times before you use your elemental burst, at refinement 5 you're getting a whopping 36 energy back over 2 seconds. Full transparency though, you're not always going to be getting the maximum bonus back. Most characters will be able to use their elemental burst after 1 or 2 skills, but the energy refund combined with the fact that this weapon's stats are respectable at the very least makes this weapon absolutely insane for free-to-play players, and I highly recommend building it if you get the chance. If you're wondering how to get it, I'm not going to spoil the exact quest, but it's obtainable from an Inazuma quest line. If you want to know what it is, I recommend checking Google. I don't want to spoil that for everyone, but it's also a really good quest. You guys will enjoy it. And lastly, the sword just looks fly as hell, so like, why would you not want to use it? In the number 4 slot, we have a series of weapons. Actually, it's going to be the Blackcliff Weapons series. Now, a lot of players really hate the Blackcliff series, and to be honest, I was a player that hated it for a long time as well. But the value you get from Blackcliff Weapons is a lot better than people think. First off, they all have a decent base attack as is, and they all have a crit damage main stat. Now, the reason people don't like Blackcliff is a couple of things. 1, the battle pass weapons are a lot better. 2, some characters actually prefer other free-to-play weapons that don't have crit main stats, whether it's for something in their kit or if it's a passive of a weapon. And 3, the passive ability is usually seen as useless. It's after defeating an opponent, your attack is increased by 12 to 24% for 30 seconds. This is depending on refinement. This effect has a maximum of 3 stacks, and the duration of each stack is independent of the others. So essentially, the more enemies that you defeat, the stronger your character is going to get. Now, the issue with this is that in longer content, you may either fight boss enemies or enemies that take a lot more hits to kill, and you won't actually be able to sustain those buffs as much as you would like. And depending on the content that you're doing, these weapons can be significantly better or significantly worse. But regardless of whatever content you are doing, having a crit damage main stat is incredibly important on free-to-play weapons, because generally speaking, there aren't a lot of free-to-play weapons that have crit as a main stat, and for this reason, it just becomes that much more valuable. It makes it easier to build crit, which should be your end game goal, which will end up drastically improving your damage. For example, if an attack percent weapon is listed as better by someone in theory crafting, they're specifically talking about a theoretical maximum. They're not talking about without crit, they're talking about with crit. And if you're unable to build crit because you have bad artifact rolls, then Blackcliff can help alleviate some of that. Just to reiterate, they're not usually better than the battle pass weapons, but the benefit is that it helps you build crit on your characters as free to play, and that's just super valuable. If you want to grab a Blackcliff weapon, you can get these in the monthly shop on an every other month rotation for 24 star glitter. The third weapon that we're going to be talking about today is the prototype Crescent. It is an incredibly underrated craftable weapon that is available from the very start of the game as soon as you get the crafting materials for it. Now, why is this weapon so underrated? That's because players choose to ignore its passive, which makes it so that a charged attack that hits a weak point on an enemy will increase your movement speed by 10% and attack by 36% at Refinement 1 for 10 seconds. A lot of players who choose not to build the weapon completely ignore the fact that it's very easy to hit a weak point on an enemy. Even a lot of mobile players that I know and have talked to have said that they don't really have that much trouble aiming once they've been playing the game for a little while. And most enemies in the game are going to have a weak point. Now, there are exceptions, like some bosses don't really have a weak point, and also your Rift Hounds and Rift Wolves and Spectres aren't going to have a weak point either. But in many cases, you are going to be able to hit that weak point and get a massive attack percent bonus just for landing that small skill shot. Now, on top of that, its base attack is respectable and it has an attack percent main stat, so overall this weapon just gives you a ton of attack stat. And at Refinement 5, it gets even crazier because that attack stat increase gets to be 72%. It is insanely good. It can even get close to matching Amos' bow on a lot of different characters. It's honestly just super solid and definitely underrated. I highly recommend you guys check it out if you don't have access to a better bow already, whether that's a 5-star or just the Battle Pass bow. Coming in the number 2 spot, we have the Catch Polearm. Now, if you've consumed any sort of Genshin guide video online since the Catch was released, you've probably heard of it. It is an amazingly powerful weapon that is obtainable for free-to-play players and not time-gated. The Catch has an energy recharge main stat that goes up to 45.9% at level 90 and a fairly acceptable base attack. It's not super high, but it's not the lowest it could be either. Now, its passive is where it really shines. It's going to increase your elemental burst damage by 16% at Refinement 1 and elemental burst crit rate by 6% at Refinement 1. And at Refinement 5, those are going to double. You're going to be able to get burst damage increased by 32% and burst crit rate up by 12%. Now, you might be thinking Refinement 5 seems a lot better than Refinement 1, and you are absolutely correct. And the best part about that with the Catch is that the Catch can be refined all the way up to Refinement 5 as a free-to-play player with only your time invested. Truly, the Catch is one of the only weapons in the game that you can truly farm out without any sort of RNG elements. In order to get it, you will have to do a lot of fishing and it can take a while. However, once you get the Catch, you will not regret it. The weapon is absolutely insane, works on a ton of top polearm units like Raiden and Xiangling, and can also be put onto any character that can use Emblem of Severed Fate like Rosaria, for example, and just most polearm characters get some kind of value out of this weapon. It's very good. Before we move on to the number 1 weapon, I actually want to talk about some honorable mentions real quick that I couldn't fit in because I wanted it to be a top 5 video, but these weapons are all very useful. The first one being the Widsith, which is a catalyst that has a ton of different buff possibilities, where it can either give you elemental damage bonus, it can give you a huge attack buff, or it can give you a huge buff to elemental mastery, and on top of all of that, it has a crit damage main stat. Now, in order to get Widsith, you do have to do it through the gacha, but any account that plays long enough will eventually get access to Widsith, especially if it's something you're going for, and it's incredibly powerful on a ton of different catalyst users. The next honorable mention is the Harbinger of Dawn, which has a crit damage main stat and a crit rate passive that's going to be active whenever your HP is above 90%. Now, because it's a 3-star weapon, a lot of people don't really think it's worth it. However, at level 90 and Refinement 5, the amount of crit value it's giving you does make it a very strong competitor, even against a lot of the 4-stars and some 5-stars for some characters. Harbinger of Dawn will continue to be very strong as long as there are ways to keep your HP above 90% without putting in too much effort. And before we get on to the number 1, the final honorable mention is the Favonius Lance. Now, since Inazuma released, this weapon has been incredibly valuable because energy recharge has been a stat that almost every single character has needed to build into a lot more than they used to. Since there's no sacrificial polearm, Favonius Lance is going to be the next best thing that you have, and it is great for battering other members of your team as well, and overall just a very solid polearm option. But now for the final of the 5 weapons that I recommend to you. This weapon is the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers 3-star Catalyst. Now, if you're newer to Genshin Impact, the idea of using a 3-star weapon can seem really unappealing, but I promise you the value of Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers is absolutely insane, and you should definitely think about running it. Though it is an HP main stat and that doesn't work for every single character in the game, the effect of it makes it so that when you switch characters, the new character that takes the field has their attack increased by 24% for 10 10 seconds. This is at Refinement 1. When you get to Refinement 5, this attack increase is 48%. Now, of course, this effect can only work once every 20 seconds, so there is a little bit of a cooldown, but by running this on a character that is already a support like Sucrose, Kokomi, or Barbara, you're effectively getting a bunch of attack bonus out of a character that was already there to give your team more support as is, and you don't have to run an extra character for it. Combine that with the fact that it's a 3-star in the gacha and very easy to refine, it's an excellent option. You don't even have to level it up. You can level it if you're using Kokomi or Barbara, but honestly, you could leave this weapon at level 1 and it would still give you the same bonus and it would still be very valuable. I cannot undersell the value of Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers. There are so many different characters it fits onto well to bring your team's damage up, and it is just an immaculate weapon. This has been my top 5 free-to-play weapons that you should be building. Every weapon showcased today has a different use, but all of them bring a ton of value and will definitely enhance your account if you're not purchasing the battle pass or able to use 5-star weapons. Are you using these weapons? If so, which ones are you using the most? As usual, if you've enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe down below, like the video, comment something that you learned, or maybe just your favorite thing about the video, follow the Twitch for live content, and I will catch you guys next time.